But I am joined with my name, Arnaud, and I always want to get this right because for some reason, Arnaud, I always want to call you something else. But Deverlay, Arnaud Deverlay, he is, there we are, he is author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. Arnaud, we got to get you to write another book, my man. How you doing?
I'm okay, Jamal. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So you hit me in a text, and you asked me if we were going to cover. Oh, I see. Yes, the Congo and Bryansk. I watched that. Basically, the litany of trucks and vehicles that were in the road as Russia was driving through, and you can see all of the Ukrainian vehicles just destroyed and just annihilated. I think I even have that clip that I can pull up in a moment. But first and foremost, like I said, how you doing? You having a good day so far?
Yes, I'm okay. Are you referring to the refrigerated trucks with the Ukrainian corpses inside?
Yes.
Yes.
Unless we're talking about something else. I thought that was
No,
the
that's it.
convoy.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's the
Okay.
that's the convoy.
Yeah. I've been watching Russia stream towards Sumy. Ukraine has been pulling forces from other parts of the battlefield. It doesn't seem to be working. Russia still seems
Actually,
to be.
that's the one in Bryansk, in the
No, I
Bryansk
know. I'm just.
region. Oh, yeah,
Oh,
okay. Right.
okay. So we may be talking about different ones. So let
Yes.
me pull this up. Convoy of the dead Kiev's mendacious pretext to disown his fallen soldiers. Oh, okay. You mean okay? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm confused. Do you mean the refrigeration trucks that they refuse
Yes.
to accept the people? Yeah, that is grotesque. That is grotesque. From my understanding, they only recently accepted those soldiers. I mean, they didn't want to
Yesterday.
pay for the
Yes.
soldiers. They didn't want to, they tried to pass a law that said they didn't have to pay for the soldiers. Like, shameful, shameful. Go into that for me. And I think part of the embarrassment is that the number of soldiers that Russia is returning versus Ukraine is returning is so radically different. I mean, Russia is given well, like 6,000
That's the re-
soldiers.
that's the real story, actually. Yes, to me
Yeah,
anyway. It's the
yeah.
ratio that's disproportionate. Well, I
Because
mean,
I think
just so that yeah,
no, no, go
just
for
so
it.
that our viewers can have a contextualized approach on the story. So we had those rounds of talks in Istanbul in late May, early June, and on the 2nd of June there was a meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations. They decided to at least agree on proceeding with humanitarian issues, i.e., swapping of POWs. Right?
Mhm.
Why is that? Because Zelensky himself essentially prohibited his delegation from engaging in negotiation bearing on territorial issues, status of Ukraine in as far as NATO is concerned, the size of the Ukrainian armies, if and when the conflict comes to an end, etc., etc. So there was nothing left really to discuss but technical humanitarian issues. And to the extent that the Ukrainians did not want to aggravate Donald Trump, one can assume there was at least some attractions on those issues.
Yeah.
So where everything started veering off the script is when the Russians unilaterally offered to provide Kiev a batch of its fallen soldiers, 6,000 of them, no less. And that's when somehow so they never said anything explicitly. They tried to seek refuge in technicalities bearing on agreed upon lists that they needed time to verify that the data that were provided by the Russians were actually accurate. But the Russians, obviously would not have gone out of their way to do so unless they did all the legwork, which they did. And so after about 3-4 days of mute silence, essentially prompted by punctuated by a statement by Budanov himself that we will take care of it next week. The Yes, next week. So we're Sunday. I was there. We were called like just a mere few hours before to head to Bryansk to basically document the transfer and the transfer that never took place on Sunday essentially. And so yes, basically we're talking about what 6,000 fallen soldiers.
Hmm.
With the first batch of them, 1,212, if I recall, stored in refrigerated trucks, ready to be handled over, pretty
Right.
much. And when the swap did indeed take place yesterday, Wednesday, we're looking at a situation where Ukraine gets 1,200 and some of its fallen soldiers, and the Russian Federation retrieved 27, which is a ratio of 1 for 45, essentially.
Wow.
So you got to keep in mind that Zelensky himself went on record last December 2024 in a Politico article where he claimed that the grand total losses of the Ukrainian armed forces stood at 43,500, with about 400,000 wounded. If you look at just one batch, and I surmise that there are more of those Ukrainian fallen soldiers that Russia is actually, keeping on ice. No pun intended. Why? For the simple reason that Ukraine does not retrieve its dead at all. This is actually something that's handled by Russian soldiers. And you have to keep in mind that when those bodies are recovered, they've been laying into the field for a few days at the very least. And so the state of the corpses are very damaged. Uh,
Hmm.
you have rodents, you have the weather elements, you have stray dogs picking at it. So by the time basically the bodies are yes are recovered,
Damage.
retrieved, yeah, they're all mangled. So this is basically a PR disaster for Ukraine. So of course, and this was mentioned by one of your guests. There's the compensation issue, of course, i.e., that all the money that might have been made available to compensate families, keeping in mind that those soldiers, by and large, for a lot of them, were enticed to join the military in exchange for financial compensation. To
Right.
the extent they were sent into the meat grinder, the very least that they could expect was for their family to be getting some kind of pension. So that's basically a scam. It's an illusory promise. That's what we call it in at law, an illusory promise. The Kievan elites want to have their cake and eat it too, essentially, and they do not care, how many of their own sons, and from what I understand, soon daughters, get to be sent to a certain death. I think the average lasting, surviving expectation is about 3 days. Sometimes it's even one day. Suffice it to say that it's a PR disaster, which, when you take into account the fact that Zelensky and his ilk have been waging essentially a PR war as opposed to a bona fide, with self-reflected military conflict, this is really something that could break open the whole thing in Ukraine. Uh, because basically what it shows is that uh, not only do the Ukrainian elites do not care about their dead, they do not care about the most simple basic principle of international humanitarian law, which is actually something that even the Ukrainian branch of the International Red Cross has taken great care in reminding people on their own Twitter feed, involves providing closure to the families. So we have somewhat of a tacit complicity of the ICRC on this, because they could not ignore what is going on the battlefield, and that those numbers don't add up. Therefore, to the extent they are also in touch with the Russian Federation, obviously, because they're supposed to be neutral and they're supposed to be supervising uh, the parties to the conflict in as far as they're abiding to the Geneva Convention. But strangely enough, the ICRC has been extremely coy and, if not outright, silent, in trying to prompt Kiev to at least abide by the most elementary laws of wars. And so, what I'm understanding here, my take on it, is that this is not the end of it. That to the extent they have finally relanded and basically gone out and showed up and retrieved their dead, there's a precedent that's been established now. By the way, the Red Cross was present yesterday during the transfer. And to the extent, as I believe, there are possibly tens of thousands more corpses, Ukrainian corpses, being processed as we speak in Russian morgues. Russia could very well, and they actually announced there will be a third round of discussion in Istanbul, because for a few days there was somewhat a noise coming out of Kiev that, that third round of discussion, I don't know about this. But, now we know for a fact there will be a third round of discussion. What else is going to be discussed if, again, the issue of humanitarian, law? This is the only mandate that the Ukrainian delegation has. So this should make for very interesting development, in the future. And to me, to the extent military observers are want to describe key battles or development of wonder weapons, or a palace crew that sees, the ruling faction being toppled by an opposite faction, in order to at least salvage what can be salvaged of a country that's losing a conflict, so that they can rule over what's left of it. In this particular case, and to the extent this conflict has been characterized, at least in as far as Kiev is concerned, as a PR operation, this particular thing is going to be increasingly difficult to basically push aside. And it might just be, the proverbial dam that's going to blow open, the whole thing, as far as Kiev being able to sell their legitimacy to Ukrainian people per se.
Yeah, it's shameful. I mean, it really is. I mean, you pointed something out. So they are now talking about enlisting women to go fight. And Zelensky pointed out that the Western governments were pressuring it to bring in 18-year-olds. And it's like, okay, so you're trying to enlist women to go fight the war, and you can't even pay for the bodies that are already being given to you by the opponent. And so, from my understanding, this is going to be like $1 billion that they would have had to pay out that you just don't have. Meaning, that's the dirty secret. They don't have the money to pay these families, even though they try to get more and more families to go out and fight and die over and over again. And it's like, I don't know how that works in a country. Like the outrage that would take place in the US if that happened. Oh, it would be over the top. But do you see this as being politically destabilizing in Ukraine itself proper? Like, how does Kiev deal with this? I mean, politically, or is it just no, men are scared to come out their houses because they're going to be snatched and thrown to the front lines? Like, what is your take on this?
Well, as you mentioned, at the same time, simultaneously, they keep snatching people off, and they're going to be lowering conscription age, and they're going to be going after women. So, if on top of it now you start having batches, thousands of corpses being flooding essentially the Ukrainian morgues, notwithstanding every measure being implemented to control the flow of information in Ukraine, there's going to be a word of mouth. People are going to be talking, and people already are talking. But to the extent this is becoming more and more of an issue, it's going to completely undermine this notion that Kiev is taking care, doing the utmost to preserve its soldiers as opposed to sending them to a certain death. There's nothing that, like a grieving family talking to another grieving families, in as far as how long it took them to know for a fact that their sons or brothers or sometimes their uncles or fathers, even because I know they've been sending 50, 60-year-old people into the meat grinder. How are you going to at some point stop the leaking? It's going to be almost impossible. It might take some time, but you know how it is. It's first it's a slow trickle, and then it becomes a gush, and the next thing you know, the whole dam is bursting open, and we could be witnessing an outright revolt, because what do people have to lose? I mean, if the predicate is to say, okay, fine, the country is under attack, the sovereignty of the country is under attack. We understand those Russian people are really, really evil. They really want to take us, down. We'll do what we have to do. That's the social contract. But the assumption is that you're going to provide us with the proper gears, and you're going to basically respect your own laws. There's a presidential decree that was adopted actually in the Council of Ministers on February 28, 2022, bearing on the financial compensation for families, set at $50,000. So you are violating your own regulations, your own laws, and basically, what do we get out of this? We're basically bleeding for you to purchase a chalet in France or Monaco, to get luxury vehicles and jewelry. I mean, people know what's going on in Ukraine for years as far as the corruption is concerned, but I don't think people can necessarily imagine the depth and the reach of the said corruption when it comes down to their loved ones. And this could really be, the tipping point that basically says, we're not going to fight no matter what, and if anything, we're going to seek vengeance.
I want to hit you with something else. Russia is streaming and Sumi. It seems that they can't be stopped. There have been all sorts of precision strikes taking place in Kharkov. Kharkov has been getting hit left and right. Taking place in Kiev, hitting missile facilities, mercenary locations, weapons manufacturing, missiles, meaning Storm Shadow, Scout. They've blown up Patriot missile systems. This seems to be a new phase of the war. Russia seems to have gotten the message that Trump either can't be trusted or has no power over his government, which would also mean Trump can't be trusted, and that they are pursuing unconditional surrender. Is that a fair assessment of what seems to be taking place in Moscow right now?
Yes, I think you're right. And I'm sure they are, the Russian elites are the first one to be sorry about it, because there were a lot of expectations, reasonable expectations, were born out of Trump's elections and Trump's campaign promises and his bravado statements on the Ukrainian issue needing to be put to an end. So they gave it time. They provided him with all the elements that he needed. But in the end, especially as far as the recent terrorist attack, bearing on the railways, four of them, and the spectacular attacks on some of the strategic airplanes, bombers, in those bases far, far from the front, like 4,000 kilometers east, has really prompted the Russian leadership to step it up, and basically, double down on taking down all the capabilities that Kiev still holds available to wage what is increasingly becoming a terrorism war. And so a lot of people are saying, yeah, why don't we just declare war once and for all and be done with it? Well, because we're not dealing with a country and that's connected in a way to the issue of the Ukrainian debt, is that this country is not a regular country. They're not abiding by any international treaties. They're a
Right.
bunch of thugs. And so they're acting as thugs. And so you're not going to extend to them the protocol that would imply that you're going to declare war on another country. It's a, basically it's a police operation. It's a policing operation. It started as a police operation on February 24th, 2022, and now it's becoming an anti-terrorism operation. So that's what it is, but to the extent that clique has got access to important, substantial support, military support, material support, advising support, you need to basically amputate, surgically strike and dismantle methodically all those devices that they. So there's been an issue talking also about the bridges. A lot of people have been commenting on the fact that why hasn't Russia bombed the bridges, 16 or 17 of them on the Dnieper River? Well, owing to the fact that those bridges are used by Ukrainian civilians, but it would seem as if increasingly even those bridges might just be fair game now. So I think
Yeah.
Russia, as the summer gets in full swing, is gearing up for a full-fledged offensive, and they're going to basically try to collapse the front. Some say in the Sumy Kharkov region. We have the Russian army has entered the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast,
Yep.
but for all I know, we could also see some action down in Kherson, Zaporozhye. It's difficult to exactly see where. It all depends. They're probing the front, applying pressure points to the extent they find soft ground. They will usher in, create those cauldrons, try to encircle cities not taken by force, preserve their forces, go around them, cut off all kind of supplies to out and into the cities, and keep moving westward until at some point Kiev does not have the means to keep waging this conflict. This has gone on long enough. It's definitely something now, because you have to understand that public opinion in Russia is also extremely angry about what has happened last couple of weeks. We've heard all kind of people calling for the most radical means of retaliation, and so
Nukes. They're calling for nukes.
yeah, I mean, so you put yourself in the shoes of Putin. He has to be the arbiter of all those factions,
Yeah.
and to that extent, he has to be the adult, I guess, in the room, and make sure he does not get goaded at the same time and handle a PR victory to NATO, because that's what they want. They want him to basically lose it, quote unquote, so that they can get themselves a new lease on life in as far as PR is concerned. So it's really a delicate balance. You want to ramp it up, but you don't want to go to so much overboard that you are handing over a PR win on the other side. So this is where we are right now. This is where we are.
The Brits. And I'm going to say the Brits, even though I'm saying America and the Brits, but I'm going to say the Brits. For Russian media, I think I know why. But I'm going to put that to the side. The Gray Zone UK came out with an article pointing out that the Brits had been working with the Ukrainians step by step on terrorist activities for the state of Ukraine, especially from the standpoint of going after this kind of war of attrition just below the threshold of direct warfare with Russia in the Black Sea. My feeling on this, and part of me, the reason why I say I'm sick of this war, is the longer it goes on, the more Europe is prepared or gets prepared for something. That's assuming they're able to cobble themselves together. And B, the longer it allows this sort of sniping from the background, like the Brits or the Americans or whoever else, to hit Russia while simultaneously saying we don't have anything to do with the fact that you just got hit. I've seen them blow up British office in Kiev. Slightly funny to me. But what is the plan for that? I mean, or is there a plan for that? Is it we're just going to maintain course? There may be these terrorist activities that we just accept as we pursue the ends to finish the war.
You mean on the Ukrainian NATO side?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not entirely Ukrainian terror by itself. I mean, it's the Brits. You have the
Right.
foreign
But you're
country.
saying, but so yeah, okay. Yes, of course. This is what they know. They cannot militarily change the complexion of the conflict. This conflict is inherently lost, owing to
Yes.
a whole range of factors which have been discussed and inventoried by a lot of experts. So this is not about winning that conflict. This is not about regaining the lost territories, and this is certainly not about regaining Crimea, as
No.
some are want of saying in some, amidst some drug-induced delirium tremens. So no, what is it about? It's about keeping the conflict going at all cost, and again, trying to in order to escalate, because some people want escalation. Make no mistake about it. We're not dealing with rational people, and to the extent some people on the western side of things are somewhat more rational than others. It's all a matter of perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
There are some who are definitely gung ho about making sure this whole thing veers out of control, literally, literally. Why? Because the moment the game is up, there's going to be so many, what you might call it, bats coming out of hell. What were they doing? How much were they involved? Who has the receipt? You're not going to be able to cut all the loose ends on your way out as you evacuate yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be scurrying out of Ukraine because they know what's coming for them if they stick around too long. So they are pretty much all joined at the hip that this thing has to be maintained in such a way that we can somehow continue pretending to rule over what's left of the country and doing running our businesses, whatever that business may be: biolabs, organ trafficking, weapons trafficking, organs trafficking, kids trafficking, you name it. The list is endless. It's a cluster F, this place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to the extent, they lose the conflict, a la Berlin, i.e. the Russians, launch a somewhat of a lightning operation and decapitate the regime. Just imagine how some people, not all of them, but some people are going to be feeling in Western capitals because they are themselves completely involved up to the shoulder in this
Oh, they're
whole
going to
thing.
be dejected. Yeah, they're going to be
Yes,
dejected is an understatement. It is human. Pete Hegseth was at a Senate committee hearing, and Mitch McConnell was like, "Hey, are we going to help the Ukrainians out?" And Hegseth pointed out, he says, "What we don't want is to show not only did Ukraine lose, but America lost also." And it's like, dude, that ship is sunk. Like you can't get out. Like this is the thing about the Trump administration. This pretending like that is Joe Biden's war, as opposed to no, that is America's war, and you're an American president, and you're continuing the war. Don't give me this nonsense that you're just a
of
third
course.
party actor in this. It's just nonsense. One last